Hello, my name is Özlem Sarıoğlu, and this is the Coaching Program, sponsored by Sparkus, a coaching tech company that optimizes coaching and mentoring solutions for cultural transformation, talent, and leadership development within organizations. Welcome to the show. Hello, coaching passionates around the globe. Welcome. You're listening to the Coaching Program, the show that brings you tips and tricks of designing and implementing successful coaching programs within your organization. I'm your host, Özlem Sarıoğlu, a professional coach and co-founder of Sparkus digital coaching platform, which scales meaningful coaching experiences to larger audiences within organizations. My guest today is Sue Gammons. Sue has experience of designing and leading large-scale global coaching programs, including an award-winning women's leadership development program and the training of internal coaches. Today, we'll speak about all these wonderful experiences Sue brings to the table. So, Sue, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to be with you today, Özlem.
Yeah, same for me. And so I've made a short intro about you, but it would be lovely to hear about you and your experience in the GSK with your own words, maybe just a few words about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Yes, thank you. So yes, as you say, I had a background and quite a long career in the pharmaceutical industry, primarily with GSK. And I started off in much more technical areas of the business and then in leadership roles before moving more into HR-aligned roles. And I think at an early stage of my career as a leader of a team, I developed this passion for supporting people with their development, and really the coach was within me at that time, even though I didn't necessarily I didn't call myself a coach, and probably didn't do a particularly great job in terms of pure coaching skills as we know them now. But it led me to follow that interest and training as a coach around about 10 years ago now, when GSK was setting up an internal coaching function. And then I got more and more involved in coaching, taking on different coaching assignments and getting more involved in training people to be coaches before finally moving into the role of coaching director about 5 years ago now. And as you say, then was involved in not just coaching, but also leading some global coaching programs. And then I left GSK, just to be honest about this. I left GSK at around 6 months ago, and have set up as an independent coach and consultant, and very much want to support other organisations to think about coaching within their organisations now.
Yeah, I think that's both our passion, because what I experience is like coaching is mostly used as a development tool, but sometimes there is not a fully developed program. That's basically why we're having this podcast to shed a light for people who would like to have that kind of an organizational coaching program. And it's GSK's experience is especially very important in that respect, having award-winning programs and everything. But maybe let's start with the basic why first. Like you already said that there is an internal coaching going on in GSK. And like, where did that need stem from originally?
Yeah, so I think coaching had been used within GSK for quite a number of years, but it was very disorganized in many ways, in that as people wanted a coach wherever they were in the business, they would just find somebody externally to do the coaching for them. So there was a real discrepancy in the costs and the investments of coaching, and also in the quality and the standards of the coaches being used, because there was no one with really any expertise overseeing that and looking at how do we ensure that when we're paying for coaching, we're getting good quality and good value for money. So back in 2010, GSK made the decision to set up an internal coaching team. And one of the first roles actually was about assessing, making sure that one, coaching was available globally, but also making sure that the external coaches that were used were of a high standard. And then I think what very quickly followed after that was the recognition that we could build an internal coaching function to provide this resource on a much, there was an analysis done of how much was spent globally on coaching, and it was, I don't know what the figure was, because I wasn't, to be honest, I wasn't involved right at that very early stage, but it was huge, and a recognition that there was a way of using the employees worldwide to train them as coaches, so that they could provide much of that coaching service, and also to extend the coaching service so it wasn't just available for senior leaders as it had tended to be up until that point, but that other managers and employees further down the organisation could also benefit from coaching. So yeah, it was very much a decision back in those at that time to build a team, and it was recognised that this could be a real. It was a strategic move to support a transition that the company was going through, and to support the business strategy and really the culture of the organisation at that time, and embed more of a coaching approach for leaders in the organisation too.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned really good points there in terms of like there has to be a strategic need for the business actually. So that is sometimes a little bit missing, and to define that strategy is a good starting point, I believe. And also what you said about the culture is also very important, to turn it into more like a culture. And I understand by your description that the internal coaches were not like external coaches who were employed by the organization, but they were more like GSK people who were trained to be coaches. Did I get that right?
Yeah, so I think initially that there was always a mix. We always continued to use external coaches, but back in 2010 there was a decision to let's train up employees around the world to become internal coaches, so that they would do their day job. They would continue to do their day job in GSK, and they would spend a few hours a month coaching people in other parts of the organization. So these were contracted coaching assignments. This was over and above what we might expect leaders to do in coaching people within their teams.
Oh. Great. So may I ask, like, what was you said that you were not there from the very first day, but maybe you already trained many internal coaches. So where do you start from developing people within the organization to become internal coaches? How that process really goes on?
Yeah, so although I wasn't directly involved from the organising of it, I actually was involved from the beginning, and that I was part of one of the first groups who became trained as a coach, and that was actually my starting point of coaching in the organisation. So I met the head of coaching who was setting this up, Sally Bonnywell, and she invited me to train as an internal coach, or what we would call in GSK a job plus coach. Because as I say, they were doing a job, people like myself. I had another job in GSK, and I trained to be a coach, and then would work with people in the have coaching assignments with people in the business. So I think where the starting point was. First of all, people who had an interest in coaching would first be invited to a 2 or a 3 day workshop, first of all to train in some basic coaching skills. And then they would go and use those skills in their leadership roles. So but really using coaching skills not as contracted coaching assignments, but first of all to practice their coaching skills. And then if they did that and found that really they enjoyed the coaching and they wanted to take it further, then they had the opportunity to attend a coaching training workshop, and to be fully assessed and trained up as a coach. So it was very much, I think it started almost like a bit of an invitation-only program, and then became more of a more inclusive program where people could apply with support from their business for them to attend. And then, of course, the other aspect of it's all right training people to be coaches, but there's no point having an internal coaching pool if you haven't got the demand for coaching as well. So there's also that aspect to think about. It might sound like a very obvious thing. Oh, there must be people in the organisation who need coaching, but how do you generate the demand? And actually, that was one of the issues, if you like, at the beginning of coaching in GSK, is that coaches had been trained, but there wasn't really quite the demand for coaching because people didn't quite understand. They didn't know that the coaching offering was available, or they didn't quite understand what it was. So I think that's also an important part to think about at the very beginning: is how do you spread the word of coaching into the organisation so that they know that coaching will be available from these internal coaches?
I think that's a very important point, what you're saying. What I also see in many organizations when we train either job loss coaches like in the GSK case, or managers to be coaches, one of the reasons that I see that these endeavors are not really taking off is the people to be coached generally don't have the notion of what coaching brings, and they don't really, maybe they need coaching, but they're not aware of the need. So that's a very good point that you're making, really.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe that's the next question. Like, how did you generate that demand?
Yes. So in a number of ways, actually. So first of all, using the coaches, the people who've been trained to be coaches, they are the biggest champions of coaching in an organisation. So initially, although whilst they were also trained, they had a key role. And I remember, myself, it's almost like I felt a bit of a pressure to spread the word of coaching in my part of the organisation and to help drive the demand as well. So using the coaches themselves to spread that word, and then other more traditional ways of getting communications out there. I think one thing that is really important to also think about is senior level sponsorship, and have senior level leaders within the organisation actively championing and talking about coaching also goes a long way. I mean, there's a number of reasons why their role is really important from an investment point of view as well, but certainly also I think they can play a key role in being champions and advocates for coaching. And then, of course, through the usual route of through the communications through HR functions, often the development of coaching, HR is a key point of being able to recognise where there might be a need for coaching with the business that they're supporting. So making sure that the HR function is very well aware of what's on offer too.
Yeah, those are really good starting points. And I would ask, like, what worked well and what actually didn't?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that did work well was, as I referred to, having senior level sponsors. We had some really some people at quite a senior level in the organisation. There was a lot of support for coaching in the organisation, and having those people speak, doing little videos or articles on the company intranet and other company communication channels, having them speak about coaching was hugely impactful in helping others lower down into the organisation understand why coaching was important and how it could support people with their development. So I think we were very fortunate. I say fortunate. It was a bit of a fortunate in that people were interested, but actually I think we had there was a lot of work to engage those people and to make sure that senior level support was in place as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
So that
the
was step.
kickoff, yeah, the kickoff requires some fortune, but I think after a while it requires the quality that the people see the results. So
Yes.
I wouldn't be
Yeah.
so humble. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was. I think that's a real key thing that worked very well. I think one of the other things that's, I don't know whether we say it's a struggle or it worked well, but in a way it's something. It's probably a bit of both, and something to think about for anybody thinking about setting up an internal coaching function is really to think about investment and resource. These things don't just happen. I think it's very easy to say, oh, we'll just give that responsibility to somebody who has half a day a week to spare, but actually that may not be enough over time. So really thinking forwards, certainly. And so if I think about the resource, for example, it did need resource. It does need
Yeah.
resource to maintain that function. Obviously, depending on how many internal coaches you're going to train, but
Yeah.
I saw that as a bit of a struggle in GSK in a resource constrained environment, as many organisations are.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
make sure that you've got the right resource to set up training, to continue to engage with the internal coaches that you've trained, to match people who want coaching to coaches and so on, and to manage all of that function. If it's going to be set up well, it does need some thought about the resource.
Yeah, I was also thinking about like how do you maintain the quality? How do you maintain, like you said, the demand? How do you even do that? So yeah, do you have some tips and tricks there that worked?
Yeah, so I think in terms of quality and how do we maintain that? Again, it's something that needs to be really thought about from the beginning. I think
Yeah.
first of all in GSK, I guess the first thing is making sure that your training is of a high quality standard. And there was a lot of effort put into developing a training program, and we wanted it to be of high quality. We wanted it to be globally recognized as high quality standards. So we actually used the ICF core competencies and the ICF code of ethics as the standards for the training. And although the training itself wasn't accredited to ICF, we very much designed it and delivered it to those standards. And I think that's important, is to really understand what's a good standard of coaching training initially, and to also have some sort of an assessment, which is what we did with the coaches. So coaches would go through the training, but then they would be assessed. So they would be assessed whilst they were on the training itself. And then there was also like a 3-month probationary period, if you like, when they've done their training, where they practice their coaching with peers who've been on the training program. So they do, so they're coached, and they're also coaching their peers for 6 sessions each. And they also have some training style supervision, so that there's a continuity. It's not just a one-off. People go through a workshop and then that's it. They're out the door coaching. There's this probationary practice period where they're really practicing, and then they're observed in their practice to ensure that they really are coaching, and that we can, as the organisation is then saying, yes, we have these coaches, we can make sure that people who then engage with the coachees, have a good coaching experience. So, and then I guess in terms of another aspect of maintaining the quality is also something to think about, is once people are trained as coaches, it doesn't stop there. And there's an ongoing maintenance of the quality. So provision of supervision. We had coaches were required to attend a minimum of 3 supervision sessions a year, and also 2 additional CPD events.
Okay.
So again, that's something to think about: is how do you provide supervision, or how do you ensure that coaches have that ongoing opportunity to reflect on their practice?
Yeah, yeah, very important. Especially, it's not only the training, but also the supervision, also the receiving feedback, being observed whilst
Mm.
having sessions, and of course, kilometer also works. Like the more you do it, the better you get it at it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, very very important points to think about from the very first day. And I'm just wondering, have you ever benefited from somehow technology throughout this process?
So if I'm to be honest, we managed pretty well. Not brilliantly, but with some very basic technology. So Excel
Mm-hmm.
spreadsheets and file sharing through
Mm-hmm.
SharePoint sites. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we often looked at other technology platforms and would have loved, our desire was to really invest more in technology, but unfortunately the company was never in agreement to it. Doesn't it
Mm-hmm.
comes with financial cost, obviously,
Yeah, yeah.
and we never managed to convince the company of the business case for that. But I know
Mm-hmm.
there are some great platforms out there
Mm-hmm.
that I know that other companies are using, and but and we did feel limited by the Excel spreadsheets. That really, so we were stretching the limits of Excel um, many times. Having said that, one way that we did benefit from use of technology is because we were providing coaching globally.
Mm.
We were, as an organisation, we were very used to using online virtual media
Yeah.
for work generally. So we were doing virtual coaching, which I know some people, I've heard many coaches in the last few months since the COVID
Yeah.
pandemic
Yeah.
say, oh, we've had to switch everything to virtual, but actually we'd been
Mm.
using virtual technology for many years.
Yeah.
So we had benefited from the use of technology in that way.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think that is one of the aspects of, especially with the pandemic, that we all had to move there, even though
Mm,
we liked it or not. I mean, uh, yeah, it has always been a ongoing discussion in the field, like do we do it
yes.
virtually or not? But yeah, now I think with the pandemic, it showed that most of it can be done virtually, and in a
Yes.
yeah, I wouldn't say better or worse, but I would say differently, actually. So it
Yes, it's
has its
possible.
own benefits. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Indeed.
And yeah, you said something important at the beginning, like when there is no demand, like where are you going to use the internal coaches? And I know that you already have a award-winning program.
Mm,
So maybe can we just have a little chat about, like, so you have this coach pool? Yes, that could be like somebody from the company might be demanding one-on-one coaching, but how do you use it more for a program type of setting? What did
mm.
you do in that respect?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we recognise once coaches were being, once coaches had been trained and we had this pool of coaches was, as you say, in addition to one-to-one coaching, you've also got a pool of coaches that can really add value to leadership development programs,
Mhm. Mhm.
whatever form and shape those leadership development programs take. Um, and speaking quite specifically in GSK, we used the coaches on a number of those leadership development programs. So, for example, on a women's leadership program,
Mhm.
we used a large number. We had a large number of women going through that program, and up to 250 women a year went through the program over 12. It was a 12-month program, and we used the Job Plus coaches to do the
Mhm.
one-to-one coaching on that program. So once you've got that resource established, it actually can help keep the cost of leadership development, which
Mhm.
otherwise might have, if you either would make a decision not, you wouldn't do the one-to-one coaching, and then
Yeah.
which really we saw it really adding value to the women who
Mhm.
were going through the group sessions and having the group sessions and the one-to-one in combination. So either that, or you would pay an external resource for that coaching, and we know that doesn't come at no cost.
Yeah, it generally is also because of that reason, one-on-one coaching is not delivered in those kind of settings, thinking about the budget and everything. And you're very right at saying, like, but it does add a value. And since you already have a pool of coaches, why not benefit from their support? And maybe
Yes.
that the elephant in the room in terms of internal coaching is always like, but do people speak to someone, confident? I mean, of course, there is the coaching confidentiality, but do they really trust someone from the same organization to open up and share their struggles? So there's always that question about internal coaching. How's your experience on that area?
Yes, it is an interesting question, and it's something I've heard debated many, many times. But in fact, my own experience and what I've heard from many, many coaches across the organisation is that actually it hasn't really been an issue. One thing that we were very careful to do was to make sure that coaches are matched to people that they don't know or don't have a connection with in the organisation. And we're and coaches became very familiar with, if they were matched to somebody by, sometimes we don't know who they know, that they would actually say, I have a conflict here, and this wouldn't be the best match. So I think making sure that they're not matched to somebody they know or have connections with helps to maintain that confidentiality. And I think the other thing that I often found is that, and often heard from coaches and coachees, is that speaking to somebody in GSK who understands the culture, who knows what it's like to work in this organisation and can speak the language, sometimes the jargon that we use in companies, they didn't have to worry about translating that for somebody who didn't know it, can be a real advantage. I think, there's obviously things to think about in making sure that as a coach, we're not colluding with something that's not working in the system but that's why we had supervision in place also to help protect against that.
That's a very good point you're bringing in terms of supervision again, because I also believe when there is always the question like, would this person be from the same industry? Does it add additional value? Yes, it does. And on the other hand, sometimes it is, like you said, maybe it's colluding my coaching, but then the checkpoint is always the supervision. So that's a very, very important part. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, coming to the end of our conversation, maybe I can just ask a very much more open-ended question of like anything you'd like to share with someone who's just, designing their coaching program in the organization. Any tips, tricks you would like to share or make them aware of? What would you like to share?
Yes, I think I've shared many of those tips already, but just to cover a couple of things, reiterate a couple of points. One is really think about, how does this fit? If you're building a business case, and it's really important to get senior leaders or sponsors engaged, and to really make this happen does take some investment of time and money. So making sure that you've got senior leadership engagement from the start is important. So as you're building a business case, think about, how does coaching support the business in meeting the business strategy, and how can it support maybe even a shift of the culture that, towards a shift that you might want to make in the culture. How does that all fit together? And I think the second point is thinking beyond the initial training of the coaches, and how will you this question of quality and maintaining the quality and governance, how is that going to work? It's not, I've seen a number of organizations set something up but not have that ongoing piece in place. And and there will be attrition of coaches. How are you going to manage that? But how do you make sure that you maintain those high quality standards of coaching as you go forwards? And other than that, I would say, if there's a chance, just get on and do it. It's a great thing to to do. If there's a will in the organisation, then go for it.
Yeah, great tips. And yeah, exactly, like just be brave and go for it. Great point.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your contributions, Sue. So I think it is really very important for people who are going through this experience to hear your experience, who have started from day one in this process, first as a coachee, as a coach being trained, and then going into running the whole program, and now seeing the difference of being in the organization and being out of the organization maybe also. So I think this is really a very important viewpoint that most people really lack most of the time. So thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been wonderful to have this conversation today. Thank you.
Thanks. Same for me. Thanks. So thank you all for joining us on this episode of the coaching program. Make sure to subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're having your podcasts. If you found this conversation helpful, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or you can simply tell a friend about the show who might benefit from it. Be sure to tune in for our next episode next week, and let's all create more meaningful coaching experiences for everyone. See you all.